Hello, welcome back to Bio24. In this case, we're going to be talking about animal behavior. Specifically, animal behavior is a very important topic covered in the ecology sections of many biology classes. We in fact have an entire animal behavior course at West Valley College, so if this lecture appeals to you, it's something to consider. Now, when we talk about animal behavior, this is a field of study known as ethology. Ethology focuses on what is the cause of different animal behaviors. And there are in fact two different ways of analyzing the cause of different animal behaviors. There's what's known as the proximate cause, and then there's the ultimate cause. The proximate cause is the biological basis of the behavior. What about the anatomy or physiology of the organism contributes to that specific behavior? How does the behavior develop in that single organism, and what mechanisms contribute to that organism's behavior? Alternatively, we can discuss the ultimate cause. Ultimate causes are the evolutionary reason for behavior, tying our previous lessons on evolution to our current lessons on ecology. When we ask about the evolutionary reason for behavior, remember we're really focusing on natural selection here. So the main focus is reproduction. What about that particular behavior promotes survivability and reproduction in the organism? How does the behavior affect the reproductive ability of that species? And how did that behavior evolve in the species? Another focus of ethology is understanding the difference between learning versus instinct. Many behaviors are a result of instinct, while others are a result of learning. And it turns out there's an advantage of one over another. Learning is going to allow animals to change how they behave depending on the environment. It provides with increased flexibility for responses, so you don't have the exact same response every single time. But learning is not always beneficial. It requires larger brains that require more energy and increased amounts of nutrients. So learning is only beneficial when an environment changes frequently. If an environment does not change very often, the instinct is more advantageous for the organism. Instincts confer a faster and more reliable response the first time, every time. Because instincts are simple and reliable, and often occur from birth, instincts usually govern behavior that's essential to have exactly right the very first time, and without any change throughout the life of the organism. This is like what we see with turtles as soon as they're born, sea turtles migrating toward the ocean. On the other hand, with mice looking for food, mice are amazing omnivores, and they can eat lots of different kinds of food. And since their environment may dictate different types of food, it's best that they learn how to acquire food in lots of different ways. Instincts with simpler behaviors have specific terms to describe their behavior. The sign stimulus, or releaser, of a behavior for an instinct is the simple cue that leads to the response. The response is referred to as the FAP, or fixed action pattern. Together, the sign stimulus or releaser and the fixed action pattern combine to form the instinct. Instincts are what are referred to as the innate releasing mechanism, or IRM. Studying learning behavior is much more complex. The classic form of studying learning behavior is in a field known as operant conditioning. Operant conditioning involves trial and error on the part of the organism. Classic case of this is studying white lab rats. It begins by allowing the rat to explore a space in his or her cage, and when the rat accidentally presses a lever in the cage, a pellet appears. After subsequent accidental releases, with more pellets every time, The rat becomes conditioned with recognizing that pressing the lever can result in food. This is operant conditioning in that the animal associates a function, or an operation, with a response. A classic natural example of an instinct, or IRM, is in night-flying moths. Early researchers noticed that at night, moths fly towards light. An instinct evolved from a need to fly upwards at night. And at night, that light would typically just be the moon. This allows the moths to migrate and find food or a mate. This is advantageous unless the light changes in the environment. Remember, instincts are advantageous when the environment is stable. But the light eventually became the light caused by flames or fire. And today, that light can be lights from a porch light, or even from an insect killer. In which case, if it's a flame or an insect zapper, the instinct to fly toward light can become fatal. This is a perfect example of how instincts can be beneficial initially, but if the environment changes, instincts can end up being detrimental. Another instinct researchers noticed in moths was the instinct to swoop or fall in response to specific wavelengths of sound. Early researchers noticed that if they jangled keys near a light, they would see moths change their flight by swooping abruptly away from the light, plummeting toward the ground. After analysis, they discovered that their keys emit a frequency sound similar to that emitted by bats hunting for prey. The way bats hunt for prey is they release ultrasonic sounds and listen for those sounds to bounce back off of their prey and hit their ears. When moths detect these frequencies, they suspect that a bat is hunting them for prey. Their response is to swoop and plummet to avoid being eaten, immediately changing their direction of flight. In this case, this instinct, or IRM, is when a moth receives a specific frequency of sound, it alters its course of flight. The sign stimulus is the ultrasonic sound waves. The FAP is the abrupt swooping and plummeting. And of course, the IRM, or the instinct, is the combination of the two. We can also bring proximate and ultimate causes into this. The proximate cause, or the biological basis of this behavior, is a combination of the ears of the moth and the neurons carrying the signal. Ears in moths are found on either side of the thorax or body of the moth, not by the head as you would expect. The neurons in the ears detect the sensation picked up by the ears and send the signal to the brain, where a separate set of neurons then send the signal from the brain to the wings to generate an erratic flight pattern. All of these different anatomical components are required for this behavior, and that's the proximate cause. The ultimate cause is the evolutionary basis for this behavior. That evolutionary basis is the adaptation to avoid being eaten. Moths that developed this instinct faster were more likely to survive. Any moth that tried to learn this behavior would easily become bat food the first or second time it happened. That makes this response function much better as an instinct as opposed to a learning behavior. I'm going to post a video, which is this YouTube link that you see on the bottom of this image, to this type of instinct in moths, so you can learn a little bit more about this type of behavior.